Those with even a passing familiarity with Chinese culture will be well aware that immortality is one of the most commonly utilized ideas in its stories. For example, among some of China's most prominent cultural figures are the 8 immortals, and hell, you could probably name any prominent Chinese cultural figure, and I would bet you $50 that someone's gonna consider them an immortal. In addition, there's a multitude of Chinese literary genres which literally have immortal in the name, and it was also this ambition of every second emperor to achieve immortality. Yet, similar to how in the West, vampire stories are just as much about twinkly bloodsuckers as they are about, the consumptive nature of power, tales of immortality in the East are rarely just about living forever, because just as Robert Pattinson is a totally fictional entity, so is the idea of stepping out of time and seeing the end of days. This begs the question then, what are immortality stories really about? This is the primary question I want to analyze in this video through a discussion of Reverse 1999's Spring Unending chapter. Spring Unending follows 2 timelines, separated by several centuries but linked together through a series of wind nods, which serve as the story's central structural device. In the present, a magazine writer named Reed is sent to China to report on a children's poem that foretells a catastrophe and the descent of an immortal bearing the method of longevity. Her best lead is an anonymous contact from an online message board who, upon her arrival in Zhu County, stands her up, and instead directs her to track down some wind knots if she wants to find the truth.
Who are you? Why are you telling me this? What do you know about the method of longevity? And whose memory did I just see? Take this! I hear an immortal will appear at the fair to grant longevity. Idle folk, Taoists, Yao, all manner of people have come to...
As Reed unravels them, she bears witness to the past. In the past, during what appears to be the Ming Dynasty, a young Yao named Mayfly arrives in Zhu County chasing the same prophecy Reed is investigating. Yao are beings whose fundamental nature differs from ordinary humans. In Mayfly's case, she's a sentient blade of grass with a short natural lifespan, and she has come seeking the method of longevity in earnest. Her guide and traveling companion is Paper Heron, an ancient Taoist who's been wandering the world in an attempt to recover her lost senses, most notably her sense of taste. Despite the efforts of Pretty Boy Constable Cheng to keep all Yao either outside of Zhu County or behind bars, Mayfly and Paper Heron make it into the city. Mayfly soon joins the School of May, an institute founded by Master Ren, Paper Heron's former disciple, ostensibly to help short-lived Yao attain the longevity they seek. Nearly everyone except Mayfly finds the school suspicious, and they're right to. At the moment of the prophesized calamity, Master Ren attempts to use the collected life force of the school's members to slay the Earth Dragon that sleeps beneath Zhu County, killing many of them in the process. Master Ren's plan fails. Paper Heron is forced to destroy her treasured sword, the last legacy of her White Horse School, and the catalyst for the method of longevity, in order to seal the dragon and everyone around it once more. From an outside perspective, the story of Spring Unending can be one that is difficult to penetrate. Although the actual chain of narrative events itself is pretty simple, the references, symbolism, and moral ideas that it builds upon can seem questionable for people who don't have a grounding in Eastern philosophy, such as myself. For example, why is Master Ren seeking to kill the land dragon instead of sealing it again a bad thing? Paper Heron says that it's because it goes against the will of heaven, but what is the will of heaven, and how can you know what it wills? And why does everyone seemingly have the ability to just shapeshift? All of these questions actually have key answers that tie into the way that the text is meant to be understood. So without further ado, let's get to the part you're actually here for, the analysis. At the root of a lot of the questions I posed earlier is one term, qi. Now, if you've read cultivation novels or or have any level of exposure to wuxia, you're probably thinking that you have at least a passing understanding of what qi is. It's like that thing, that cultivators build up in their body and use to power their flashy skills. It's like, mana, kinda. And that's where you'd be wrong. you would be wrong, and that wrongness would cause you to miss the point of the story. A literal translation of qi would be breath or wind, but it would also miss the point, because like a lot of Chinese cultural concepts, what it actually means has changed significantly under the influence of writers, folk beliefs, and the simple passage of time. One of the earliest texts which references qi as per our contemporary understanding of it is Confucius's Analects, in which the venerable scholar uses it to seemingly refer to a motivating human force, akin to will or energy. Over the long years, scholars such as Mencius and Mozi expanded the usage of the term qi to refer to energies not only within the human body, but within animals, corpses, the weather, elemental phenomena, and so on. By the late Warring States period, this understanding seems to have coalesced on the idea of qi being a universal life force that applies to all things, including inanimate objects and even concepts such as good and evil, kinda like, you know, the Force from Star Wars. In fact, for my money, that's where Colonel Sanders probably adapted the idea from. Spring Unending further codifies this understanding of qi in one of the interstitial BBS notes. Last time, we talked about how qi is the fundamental substance behind all things with form, solid, liquid, or gas. The gathering and dispersal of qi within matter is what drives the creation and dissolution of physical things. But how does this process actually work? This time, let's dig into how qi transforms. The crucial implication is that qi is not an energy contained within the body, but it is the body, as well as literally everything else.
Step 2 is about finding your qi. Life is born of the accumulation of qi. When qi gathers, we live. When it disperses, we perish.
In fact, in a sense, qi is more real than real, as a thing's qi is its fundamental nature. We can observe this mindset in the existence of Yao, the preponderance of ideas such as body reformation and deific ascension, as well as the seeming ubiquity of shapeshifting in Chinese cultural media. Because one's qi is one's true self, and because the nature of qi is that it is in a constant process of transformation, then there's no reason why a person should be locked to that one physical form. This is an idea Bluepock has previously kind of visited with the transcendent and material worlds in Prisoner in the Cave.
Appear on the Boundless One. I am here for a simple question. How can we escape the darkness of the phenomenal world and be free from the emanation forever?
And with Metamami's Kabbalistic conception of the universe being the emanation of Ein Sof in a flowing feast.
The material world is a result of contraction, shattering, and reconfiguration of Pneuma on its descent through 4 primary spiritual worlds. Everything we see is a mere manifestation of its true form. If destroyed in this world, it will yet persist in the spiritual world. So long as the idea of it remains, it may return to the world of matter through an emanation of Pneuma.
This is ultimately the fundamental axis on which the story turns. The nature of qi, and therefore the nature of all things, is change, even when it comes to immortality. Or as Reed puts it,
The wind doesn't hover in place for no reason, let alone get tangled up.
the recurring motif of wind is one of the most potent yet overlooked elements of the story, because it also helps bridge Spring Unending's other foundational concept, the Tao. Well, what is the Tao? Great question. Let's just crack open the foundational Taoist text, the Tao Te Ching, and see what it says. A Tao that may be spoken is not the enduring Tao. A name that may be named is not an enduring name. Well, I don't know about you, but that seems pretty... What the hell are you talking about? As you can see, the idea of Tao is one that is, somehow, even more difficult to pin down than the idea of Qi. Now, I'm just an uneducated guilo trying to make heads or tails of a concept which has been endlessly debated over throughout Chinese history, but if I were to try and boil it down, if Qi represents the fundamental building blocks of the universe, then the Tao are the rules that determine how Qi operates. One passage from the Zhuangzi reads as follows.
The great clod belches out breath, and its name is the wind. So long as it doesn't come forth, nothing happens. But when it does, the 10,000 hollows begin crying wildly. Can't you hear them, long drawn out? In the mountain forests that lash and sway, there are huge trees 100 spans around with hollows and openings like noses, like mouths, like ears, like jugs, like cups, like mortars, like rifts, like ruts. They roar like waves, whistle like arrows, screech, gasp, cry, wail, moan, and howl. Those in the lead calling out, "Yee!" Those behind calling out, "Yoo!" In a gentle breeze, they answer faintly, but in a full gale, the chorus is gigantic. And when the fierce wind has passed on, all the hollows are empty again.
Here, the scholar Zhang Zhuo analogizes the Tao to wind. It is the principle which causes the world to sing in different melodies at different times. Every event, every object, every reed of grass is a manifestation of the source of the wind expressed through different shapes. The existence of difference in the world is a manifestation of the Tao. Taoism is, then, the belief that the most virtuous thing to do is to act in accordance to the Tao. For example, one of the most famous axioms of Taoism is as follows: "Therefore, the sage dwells in the midst of non-action and practices the wordless teaching." Or as Paper Heron puts it,
Not entirely. The scripture says, "In the pursuit of worldly knowledge, one gains daily. In the pursuit of the way, one loses daily. Less and less is done until nothing is done. When nothing is done, nothing is left undone." Don't get so hung up on the path ahead. Nothing stays fixed forever. Live in the moment, and new opportunities will arise.
That's not to say that Taoism is a religion of inaction, however. It's simply that you should act in alignment with the way, or the Tao, the reason being that because the Tao determines the way of things, acting in opposition to the Tao will simply lead to discord and worse outcomes down the line. As Paper Heron puts it,
Not exactly. It isn't nothing, but rather non-action. We let go of all deliberate effort, attending to your purposes, doing only that which is yours to do.
Speaking of the sound of wind through trees, we have one very important tree in the story of Spring Unending, and that would be the May tree. In Chinese symbolism, the May tree, also known as the prunus or the Chinese plum, is one of the most common motifs still in use, and historically, the symbol was used so frequently that it was considered cliché. Until the Song dynasty, the plum blossom was no more than an occasional literary motif, one among many beautiful and resonant floral images. But then something happened. Song poets discovered the flowering plum, and after it became a popular motif with them, the artists moved in. For decades, the simple beauty of a flowering or budding plum branch fascinated the Chinese upper classes, but being the object of so much attention proved to be too much for the simple little plum blossom. And as the poets dashed off their verses, and the artists their scrolls, China produced such a mountain of plum-inspired material that one scholar author threw up his hands in disgust and listed bad poetry and flowering plum cliches among his abomination to the blossoms. Today, the flowering plum is still one of the most common designs found on any surface worthy of decoration in China. I have even seen plum blossom decorated ashtrays. Like any symbol with such a long and well-used history, pinning down an exact meaning is difficult due to the diffuse and adaptive ways in which it's been used. However, that's not to say that it doesn't have common meanings. As Welch notes in Chinese Art, A Guide to Motifs and Visual Imagery, the flowering plum holds a special place, however, in Chinese literature and art, because the plum is the first of the fruit trees to bloom in late winter/early spring, with its buds and tender petals emerging on bare limbs before the first leaves appear. It is associated with the end of winter and the dawning of spring, and therefore endurance and hope. This is a fact that I find interesting, The fact that the Mei tree, the symbol of longevity and endurance in Chinese culture, and also the symbol of longevity in Spring Unending as it spans the past and the present, is the symbol of longevity precisely because it is the first to change. The Mei tree survives the winter not by attempting to outlast it in a fixed form, but by being the first to change when the season turns. It is a sign of longevity because it heralds the coming of spring after a long winter. Just as it is the nature of the seasons to move from one to the next, it is also the nature of the eternal Tao to be in a state of change. Ironically, for the founder of the School of Mei, this is the lesson that Master Ren fails to learn. The path of immortality does not lie in trying to resist the Tao by living forever as you are now, unchanging and unaged, but by living in accordance to its flow. This idea of change and eternity being intertwined is something that is deeply resonant with Chinese history. China is often described as one of the world's oldest continuous civilizations, with a history commonly cited at over 5,000 years. But that continuity has never met stasis, whether China would like to admit it or not. Throughout those millennia, there was no single unbroken ruling body. The 5 dynasties and 10 kingdoms period alone spans half a century of fragmentation. And some of China's most celebrated dynasties, such as the Yuan and the Qing, were founded by peoples that the Han Chinese would have considered foreign conquerors. And yet, we speak of it all as Chinese history. The reason is that, well, there are a lot of reasons, mostly to do with legitimacy and soft power, but one of the reasons is that as the ruling powers changed, the cultural core, traditions of governance, philosophy, ritual, writing, historiography, all of that remained identifiable and unmistakably Chinese. The conquerors did not erase the existing framework, they entered it, suborned themselves to it, and were in turn absorbed by it. China endured not by refusing to change, but by knowing what was essential and allowing everything else to move.
100 years old. You've got to be kidding. Things change so fast. The whole county looks completely different every few decades, let alone a century.
This is the same logic that governs the School of Mei's failure and Paper Heron's recovery. Master Ren watches her teacher carry the method of longevity in her sword for centuries and concludes that the sword, the institution, the legacy, the method of longevity is the point. Paper Heron makes a parallel error. She carries the sword as a vessel for grief rather than as a tool, holding onto it long past the moment when it needed to be used. Both mistakes are the same mistake seen from different angles, treating a form as if it were more permanent than the chi that gives it shape, and losing sight of what the form was always only meant to carry or represent. With some of the major frameworks and themes in place, it's finally time to take a closer look at the divergent tales of the 3 immortals, Master Ren, Paper Heron, and Mayfly/Reed, because their outcomes best illuminate what Bluepock is trying to say when it comes to the idea of immortality. First up is Paper Heron. When we first meet Paper Heron, she's traveling the world trying to recover her lost senses, and specifically her sense of taste. In Chinese literary tradition, the loss of taste carries particular symbolic weight. It represents the loss of the capacity to discern, to tell sweet from sour, good from evil, the present from the past. For example, Dream of the Red Chamber, which is considered one of China's 4 great classical novels, utilizes this idea to reinforce its theme of decay. Without getting into it, and if I were getting into it, we would be here for hours because there's like 30 main characters or something. It follows the gradual decline of the noble Jia family during an indeterminate period in history. As one would expect out of, essentially, a soap opera set in feudal China, the story features a lot of banquets and food. But while the meals are described as vivid, luxurious, and elegant at the start, by the end of the story they elicit feelings of melancholy, exhaustion, and blandness, mirroring the decline of the family and also the dynasty. Just like how, in the West, we use the idea of taste to not only refer to food, but also to ideas such as refinement and elegance, here we see the idea of taste also being used in regards to the ability to discern. Paper Heron believes that this inability to taste comes from her stasis, And she's kinda correct, but more in a figurative sense than a literal sense.
I spent so long trapped inside that tree that I forgot what it felt like to be a part of the world. Joy, sorrow, and pain became like distant memories. But what is this bitterness that racks my heart now? I understand now. It wasn't my isolation that numbed my senses. It was regret. For 100 years, it was the only thing I knew.
At the end of the story, it's only when she's able to let go of the tragedy of the White Horse School, when she's able to let go of the past, that she can do what needs to be done. And what happens after she's able to start letting go?
And, you know, my taste seems to have restored a little. Perhaps I'll search for a place with good food and stay there for a half-month.
She gets her taste back, and the fact that this statement is explicitly paired with Paper Heron affirming that she has a newfound attachment for the world is also worth noting, as one of the other ways in which a lack of taste is often used as a symbol, especially in Buddhist texts, is as a detachment from the world. Once again, we see Blue Puck returning to a pre-existing idea, the tension between living in the world as is and living in a world formed by principles exclusively. This is the same rift that forms between 6 and 37 at the end of Verensamt.
37. Either be wise, uninvolved, and look on, or be practical, involved, and suffer. Which one will you end up choosing?
And Sentinel and Ladislav during a long, long way. In Taoist terms, Paper Heron has been acting against the will of heaven not through malice, but through attachment. She's been trying to preserve a form that the Tao has already moved past. Her recovery is the story's most direct illustration of what Reed identifies in the wind knots, things that hover in place for no reason, get tangled up and grow stagnant. Second up to the plate is Master Ren, who represents a different form of failure than Paper Heron. Instead of defying the Tao, Master Ren seeks to step completely out of the flow of the Tao and control it, an act which the story uncompromisingly criticizes as foolish. Master Ren plans on using the collected life force of the School of Maze members to destroy the Earth Dragon sleeping beneath Jew County. Paper Heron frames this as a violation of the will of heaven, because the Earth Dragon is not a problem to be solved. Its sealed sleep and the world's thriving are two phases of the same rhythm, no different from winter and spring. To destroy it permanently is to try to arrest the cycle, to make one season last forever, to step into the stage of immortality by force. In order to do this, Master Ren preys on the desperation of short-lived Yao, and covertly drains their life force. Yao who, even when confronted with the truth, still choose to throw their lot in with Master Ren because, at the end of the day, they don't really have a choice. If this is starting to ring alarm bells in your head, it should, because I don't think it's a coincidence that what the School of May does is very similar to predatory capitalism. The School of May is, despite the name, not really a school, but a company, and the product they offer, longevity, is one that they have a monopoly over. Now, while I don't think it would be accurate to call Taoism an anti-capitalist ideology, it does precede capitalism by several millennia after all, it's definitely one that decries many of the underpinning issues of capitalism, such as greed and a desire for excess, both of which Master Ren exhibit. As Paper Heron says,
Every creature, whether beast or man, wishes for more time in this world. But know this, those at their peak will decline, and those that have fallen will rise. For it is the way to take from those in excess and give to those who lack. When Manchu sleeps, the world around it thrives. When it awakens, the world falls into ruin. All is in balance. The workings of heaven remain constant. There is no need to stop her.
Last, but definitely not least, is Mayfly. The most interesting thing about analyzing Mayfly as one of the immortals is that some would not even count her as being an immortal, due to the fact that there is a lack of continuity between her incarnations. Now, while it's tempting to view this as a form of consolation, I don't believe that this was Bluepock's intent, because there's an important delineation between Mayfly and the other immortals. Mayfly is the only one of them that can act in the present, and the explicit reason why she can do so is also the reason why she's the best and most Taoist of them all. It's because she changes with the season, and is not tied to her past incarnations, that she's the only one of them that can actually affect the present, a fact which also best aligns her with the ways of Tao and Qi. And this is what I take to be Spring Unending's core idea on immortality. It states that the desire for immortality comes from a desire for more, to see more, to be more, to know more, to see one more sunset, one more horizon, one more day. But while it states that this desire is natural, it also states that being obsessed with it will blind you, whether it be reaching to a future you cannot have, like Master Ren, or a past you cannot change, like Paper Heron. Being anywhere but the present season is robbing yourself of the same time that those who are concerned with immortality are so obsessed with. And in addition, being in the present season sometimes means that we have to change. That, like the May tree, we have to shed the flowers of the past and prepare ourselves for a long winter, or that we have to break apart from icy stasis and look to start greeting the newborn spring. Now, although it's a few months late for us in Global, it's worth remembering that Spring Unending is intended to be the New Year's patch, and what better message for such a time? After all, the turning of the calendar is the time where we all look back on what we've achieved in the past year, reflect on our successes and failures, and think about what we want to achieve. Reminding people that you need not be bound to what you've done and who you are now, that it's the nature of things to change, and that sometimes the best way to move forwards is to draw a line in the sand between yesterday and today and decide that things, that you will be different, is a sentiment that I think is sorely needed. As someone who grew up on sites like 4chan, I still often take a peek at incel and chud adjacent communities, partially out of a sense of morbid curiosity, and partially out of a sense of schadenfreude. Although I think it goes without saying that there are a lot of issues happening in and around those spaces, one of the things I find the most depressing is how many of the people have fallen into those spaces by willingly chaining themselves to the past. You can take a look for yourself. As soon as you look, you'll be able to find an endless stream of stories of people consigning themselves to the fate of being unlovable, of being unable to find a soulmate, of being completely irredeemable, purely because of isolated incidents in middle or high school where a crush had spurned them, or they had a tragic encounter with someone of the opposite sex, or they were ridiculed for being earnest. And don't get me wrong, this is not me saying that you should just get over it. Many people, and not just those in incel adjacent spaces, live with deep psychological scars that these incidents in childhood have left upon them, that will be present for their entire lives. But just because you carry a psychological mark doesn't mean that you need to anchor yourself to it. One of the most important principles in clinical psychology is that emotion follows action, or in other words, in order to feel better, you need to do things that make you feel better. This is why, for example, depression can be such a tricky disorder. When someone feels or is chronically depressed, their emotions are actively stopping them from doing the things that will make them feel better. And although, as a nerd introvert contrarian, I hate to admit that doing things such as going out for a walk in the sun, or going out to see your friends for fun, or doing breathing exercises with your lung will make you feel better, they kinda will make you feel better even if you don't want to do them right now. Sometimes we just kind of have to force ourselves to change, even when it's uncomfortable, or you don't feel like it, or it doesn't feel like you, because it's the only way to regain your taste for life, or to keep up with the season, or be someone that you don't hate. And look, I get it, I've been there. As someone who's hyper-cognizant of their own mistakes, I feel like I've been looking backwards for most of my life. Hell, my greatest wish in primary school was that I would somehow be able to invent a time machine so that I could go back and correct my mistakes. And I was like, what, 10? Like, come on little guy, your mistakes are not that serious yet. Eventually, however, once I'd said my sorries and everyone but me had gotten over the situation, I had to force myself to move on. I had to draw the line in the sand and say, goodbye, Reed of yesteryear. Those mistakes are your mistakes and not indicative of who I am now or who I'll be forever. Now it's my season. If you like this video, feel free to, like and subscribe. Although I'm only really doing this for the art of it, I have a full-time job after all. The fact that I do work full-time means that I have to be really picky about the topics I cover, and knowing what people like and what they don't like can be really helpful for helping me decide what to cover next.